Hello, my friend. Welcome to today's episode of Content Creation Made Easy. I'm your host, Jen Liddy. And before we jump into today's episode, I want to give you a heads up. This is an episode where I'm chatting with a friend and colleague, and we're going to be talking about her actual messaging and how she came to understand like what she was doing wasn't quite working in the way that she wanted it to, and how we kind of, not through like a client engagement. This was like just all very casual friends going back and forth, but how we really helped her navigate her messaging, but what the personal qualities of her that she had to embody to allow her messaging to morph came through. I'm going to talk more about that when you meet her. Her name is Beth Nydick. I'm super excited for you to meet her. But before I dive in, I wanted to let you know I'm putting this podcast on hiatus for a little while. I can't say how long because I don't actually know. This is my 254th episode, and I've been running Content Creation Made Easy since 2018. It first started as a podcast called The Idea Space, which was all for like new entrepreneurs, new solopreneurs who wanted to figure out how to run their business. And then once I got into like the content messaging marketing lane of online business, this is when I changed it to Content Creation Made Easy. And I want to play with the format. I want to play with what I'm doing, but there's some changes happening on the back end of my business. And I just know I need a little hiatus from my podcast. But what I do know is that we've got 254 episodes, and I'm sure that you haven't listened to all of them. And there are some gems that are still out there that can be helpful to you even today. So I will be the first to let you know when it's back. You can get on my email list at jenliddy.com/backstage. That will actually give you it's basically a free training in how to create content using 21 tweak and repeat prompts that are all audience centric. And if you use the code CCME, you will be able to get that for $0. So go to jenliddy.com/backstage, use the code CCME, and that's a super easy way to get an awesome training and the Backstage Brilliance Marketing Toolkit, and get on my list so that I can stay in touch with you. And you will be the first to know when the podcast comes back online. So that's all the housekeeping I have for today. So what I'm going to move into next is hello to my friend Beth. Hi, Beth.
Hi, my love.
I want to tell you a little bit about Beth before we get into her conversation. So Beth Nydick is a media strategist, and she's honestly sought after because she's got some real badass stats behind her. She has been, she's like a TV producer person. She's a PR firm owner. Like, we're talking a heavy hitter here. And she's now, she's a media strategist, a podcast coach, and she's an authority in visibility marketing. She's really amazing at helping experts like you who are listening to this podcast. When you're an expert in your thing and you've been on a podcast interview, she's an expert at helping you turn that into gold. Like she likes to say, I like you to help get you consistent 10K paydays by leveraging your experiences on other people's podcasts. So what Beth and I are talking about today, you'll hear her brilliance woven in, but what we're talking about is how she shifted her offer and her messaging based on, you know, some things that like kind of sucked to talk about. Wouldn't you say, Beth? Like, it kind of sucks. So when you've got like all of this expertise like Beth has, and you've like established yourself, and you have a program that you love running, and you know it works for people, but the messaging isn't landing, you've like something has to like give, right? So let's talk about that. So Beth, hello. Thank you for coming today to chat with me about this topic.
Of course. I think it's like behind the spotlight, right? That's my podcast. But it's like behind the scenes. Like, I think we have to talk more about the actually operations of how we do things and how things versus like, I made 10K from my, like, that's great and everything. But let's be honest about the way that we actually do it, because I think it makes it so much harder for us.
Agreed.
And for me, especially, like, one of my New Year's things is to not scroll as much, because when I'm scrolling, right, I have the wrong coach, I have the wrong program, I have the wrong messaging, I'm doing the wrong thing. Right. So to have this conversation about like, you would need to be flexible and not so connected to what you're doing for your ego. I think it's a lot of, for me, I know it's a lot of ego versus like what your clients are actually telling you. And Jen, the one thing you didn't say is that you were like the catalyst for most of this.
No, I didn't say that. Okay.
when like you have somebody like Jen in your corner and she tells you the truth and you can receive it because you guys all know Jen who's listening. It's all from love. It was like such an eye opener to have those conversations. So I'm excited to allow your audience, and as I share this to my audience, for what really happens, like I said, behind the spotlight.
Yeah. So let's get started talking about the Fame Lab, which was the offer that you had, which is what you were promoting when I first met you. I've seen you teach the Fame Lab and the Fame Lab framework. Let's talk to us about what the Fame Lab is and was.
The Fame Lab it's in the program now is called Mike to Millions. It still is. It's how to turn podcast guesting into a business growth strategy. Right? How to position yourself as the authority, how to actually make those appearances actually make you money, because it's more than visibility. It's building authority. It's building connection. It's building that authentic resonance so that you can have profitability. Because most people, what I saw in the marketplace is they're going onto a podcast and having a conversation. Yes. And that's, whoever's listening, that's the wrong way to do this, people. It's just the wrong way to do this. The way to come onto a podcast is to have a strategy. One of the things I always say to my clients, Jen, is like, you wouldn't get behind a car without a license, right? You wouldn't do anything without knowing how to do it that's going to affect your life. And going on a podcast and spending an hour doing something without a strategy, I think it's just stupid.
Well, it's a waste of time. And I know that most people come onto a podcast to really serve an audience, but the reason that you're even on the podcast at all is also to serve your business. You want to serve the audience, but you also want to serve the business and position yourself. And I know that when you come from, especially for me as like a former teacher, I always want to come from a place of value. But if you're not seeding the things I know you teach, which are like, authority, like you just have to seed a whole bunch of other things, and you have to do it naturally. And that doesn't come natural to a lot of us. So the first time I heard you teach what was the Fame Lab formula, I was like, yes, this makes a lot of sense. And I remember saying to you on the call, and this is what I'm going to tell you what I said to Beth, but I'm also going to tell you all how she received it. I said, Beth, that feels like a lot of work, and I don't want to be famous. And you were able to be like, who doesn't want to be famous? Because Beth and I are like in opposite corners about this, right? Like she loves that's her whole thing. She's so good at it. But you were able to be like, then what do you want? And you leaned in to figure out what this would look like for somebody like me, what the messaging would need to be, versus being like putting up a wall and proving me wrong and arguing with me. You know what I mean? Well, don't shake 100%. Your head, because I think a lot of people would do that when they're an expert in a thing.
Two things. Number one, I know what you're talking about. So when somebody who's in your position with branding and messaging says like, this doesn't work for me, and you are in the category of my ideal client, if you wanted to be out there more, right? It was an eye opener, because one of the things that I've been struggling with probably for the last year is understanding that my ideal client isn't me.
This is a big aha.
Yeah, that was like, and I've known that, but I never had anybody actually say it to me, even though I've had every time I do a talk, I go back to the person and I was like, okay, tell me what I did right. Tell me what I did wrong. Tell me what you think that I could be changing. What did your audience say? And most of the time I get, you're amazing. And I'm like,
because you are, and you know your shit.
I know, right. But tell me a little bit. So I started getting a little bit of these inklings of like, oh, fame isn't it. Fame's not converting. Like it was converting. I was filling my programs, but not as much as I wanted to fill my programs, and having conversations that were leaning towards what you were saying, but no one it came out right. It was like, Beth, this is like, that's not going to work for me. And I was like, okay, why isn't it going to work for somebody like Jen? Because I like, if you could put me on live TV every day, that's where I would want to live.
That would be your favorite.
I'd be so happy, right? So the universe out there, live TV, I'd like to be doing that. But listening to who I was working with and what the transformation they were getting. Because yes, they were learning my system, and yes, they were implementing it. But those last classes of each cohort, when everyone's crying, right? And they're telling me, like, you've changed the way I think about what I do and the who I am and all that kind of stuff. They didn't want to be famous either, but I couldn't I didn't understand it until the way that you said it to me. It was like, to be
Interesting.
completely transparent. Like it really, I understood it. And then I don't know if you know this, I changed my deck of the presentation I was doing. So what Jen's talking about is I do a promotional strategy within the Fame Lab, and I get to it, and that's the part you were like, this is too overwhelming. This is too much. I put a slide before that part, and it said something like, stop, don't get overwhelmed. Like, so, and then I had a conversation with the audience. You don't need to do all of this. Let's just do a piece of this. And my deck now is so scaled back from that because I understood that I need to have you in my program. I need to be teaching you the system so that it is attainable versus so overwhelming, because it's not overwhelming for me, but doesn't mean it's not overwhelming for the people that I serve, because I've been doing this for 20 years.
Yeah, I remember having the conversation with you. We were sitting on your couch, and I said, I said, what made you actually make these changes? Again, because when we design something and we have a passion, like that's the way we want to do it, right? But I love how like, not coachable isn't the right word, but open is. And you said, I had the aha that there are a hell of a lot more people like you than there are like me. And again, this is about knowing your ideal audience, not just your expertise and not just what you want to put out in the world, but like, what does the market say? So again, the fact that you not only like tweaked who your, like I would say sharpened into who your audience was a big help for you. Scaled back on your deck for when you teach in other people's programs so that people don't get overwhelmed and they see the possibility rather than the oppressive like list of things to do, which ironically, I've seen you teach several times, in the name of giving value, you were like, you could do this, and it like felt like a rock on people's chest. That's not value, right? Like, so when we want to give more, we have to like say, okay, what is actually valuable? And then you were able to hear feedback from like lots of different places and be like, oh, I need to change the whole messaging of this. So like those three really, I would say fundamental, unsexy, boring things have completely changed how you've approached it. So tell us about, and the reason I wanted to have you on Content Creation Made Easy is those three things, though they're foundation, they are not easy to do.
No,
so let's talk about like what you did. How did you do it? What'd you change?
Well, I took a second to really think about like, what do my people actually want to do, right? I want you to dominate the media. I want you to be the next Oprah. Like I can see for my clients, for you, for my friends, like I can see who you can become. But if you can't even see like close to that, then I'm missing the mark.
Oh, that's such good insight.
Instead, you don't want to dominate the media. You just want to be heard. You just want to be seen. You just want to be respected. And you want to be seen as an expert in your field. So aligning the program with your personal goals alongside something that you're already doing so that you are comfortable, you can build that authority, you can attract the right people, but you can tell the right stories so that they resonate with them. I really focused on the guesting piece of it instead of the what do you want to be in the world. And when I did that, what happened was, and I think you came up with the name, was like the clarity of the profitable podcast guesting system.
Yes.
Like that's right. It was called the fame formula. What does that mean? I posted something about it recently. Oh, in a group that we're in, I posted like the name change. And one of the women wrote a comment and she was like, I don't even know what fame means.
Yeah.
And I was like, that was like, oh, right. Because you don't know what fame means. So when you change that, the tool of podcasting, and instead of it's a conduit to get famous, it's a business tool that you need to be using in your marketing, in your visibility. That's when a lot more people went, oh, now I get it. Oh, now I can do that versus like, wait a minute, I don't want to be famous.
Yeah. When you put fame there, you knew that it was too aspirational for some people, not what they were looking for, like way too far out there. And like that wasn't the goal.
Right.
But even the goal to grow my business, make money.
Right.
Yeah. I want that.
Right. It's a traffic source. And that's what the messaging is now. Like if you go to my website, the first paragraphs are about traffic. Like, what are we using? We're trying to use affiliate marketing because, 10 of your best friends are going to share everything. You're going to do ads, which just gives Mark Zuckerberg more money. Right? You're going to try to do social selling, right? Because you have all the time in the world, right? What's the alternative?
Right.
The alternative is to call Jen Liddy and be like, "Hey, Jen, let's have a podcast interview." Right? Not really, but like that's what the direction is, and then people are going, "Oh, yeah, I'm already doing podcast guesting.
I'm already doing it."
Right? How can I do it differently so that it's not a waste of time? So I'm making money from it. So there's different goals to it. Sometimes my clients are doing podcast guesting just to work out their messaging, to work out like what they're going to say in their TED talk, what they're going to like just to test to see what resonates with people. It's not always to sell their products.
True. And some people, it really is a growth journey when you start guesting on podcasts, because it helps you get confidence in yourself, and it's a place to feel like, oh, this is a way I can be known. This is and I don't need to be like on video, or I don't need to do it live or whatever. So yeah, it is, for some people, it's a great option. And then your like battle cry is, okay, now that you have this tool and you have your messaging and you're getting on podcasts, your pitches are working, what the hell are you doing with them afterward? And that is, you and I talked about this a lot, and I think the audience can relate to this. There's a lot of shoulds on us. So when you're like, you're not leveraging it enough, when you come at it with that messaging, people are like, I know, I don't even know how to share it. I have all this like invisible shame around all the podcasts that I've never even gotten to share. Right. So coming at it from this like more aspirational thing of like, how can you leverage what you have? How can you like use your podcast guesting for profit? Leading with just like the idea of it versus all the how-tos feels like such a breath of fresh air to me.
Yeah, I hear that a lot from my clients. They're like, well, I didn't even know that was a thing I could be doing. Right. Like I was on 3 podcasts last year that we didn't fully expose. You're going to see them in the next 2 months, because now we're going to put them out again. Right. Like they didn't get the traction because I was doing other things or I wasn't paying attention. I actually had like 6 podcasts come out in 1 week because I didn't plan it correctly. But it's that one of those little tweaks I could be doing. And that's why I teach the system, and I call it now the mic system, MICS. And it's about like the promotional strategy, the email strategy, and then it's the content strategy on the actual podcast. Because what I find is that people aren't talking to their framework in their story conversation. And I think that's a big miss. Because if you listen to like a regular interview podcast that I'm on, you know what I do, who I serve, what my offers are in the first 5 minutes. And nobody else is doing that or teaching that, right? They're teaching story frameworks. I'm like, no, this is story selling. And then on the back end of it, now you have all these assets. Most people, and I already get mad even thinking about it, most people put it in their story once and then move on.
Because they feel like they're annoying people. Yeah.
I'm like, it boggles my mind, because I think about it this way. How much do you charge for a 1-hour call with your clients? I'm not asking you to, right? It's like, say you charge $200 for a 1-hour call with your clients. You're spending 1 hour doing an interview. What's the ROI on that interview? Why aren't you thinking about this as a business tool, using it as part of your marketing? See, I get like my Jersey hands going.
Yes.
Why aren't you thinking about it as a business tool? And that's what I really want everyone to think of, like listening to this, is thinking about podcast guesting as a business tool and not a conversation. Yeah. To think about podcast guesting as the beginning of a conversation with a host and with your audience, not the end of the conversation.
Can you share what you think my audience would really need to know about your mic framework? Because I know that the program is now called Mic to Millions, the Profitable Podcast Guesting system. Okay.
Yeah.
So what can you share with us about Mic to Millions that will whet our appetite?
I'm really excited about it. I've made it a lot more accessible for everyone to integrate the system into their business. So often I don't have time. I don't know what to do. Like, it's really a step-by-step system that I walk you through. And then what happens at the transformation, the end of it, you're really walking away with what you're saying on the podcast, how you're saying on the podcast, how you're converting listeners into clients. And then the back end is the strategy to continue using that conversation to get them into your programs. Because one of the things I'm very honest about is your podcasting is to get an audience member to give you their email address.
Yeah.
That's right. That's the goal. And how do we get there? Is we use a system that we can integrate every day into our business easily. I could hear everyone go, well, I don't have time for that. It's too overwhelming. It's too much. I make it so easy. Because coming from the media world, as a producer, I've been in the media space for a long time. I understand the actual do's and don'ts and the things that do matter and they don't matter. And that's what I'm really embarking on my audience and the people that work with me is how to do that. And then the other side of it, right? That's what I teach. But what I actually do is help you, give you the confidence to do those things that you always wanted to do.
Yes. There's something that I think is unsaid here, which is it's kind of like when you get a gym membership and you're like, oh, I have the membership, so I've checked it off my list, right? But you have to friggin' go to the gym.
Yeah.
You have to lift up the weights, right?
Yes.
So I feel like there are a lot of people, and I have certainly been guilty of this myself, where you're like, oh, I got on the podcast. I did the thing. I pitched, which takes time. I got on, which takes time. Maybe I shared it once, which takes time. But like to actually do it, it needs to be part of the regular landscape of your life, the regular day to day. So it's like it's almost like just getting on the podcast isn't enough. And you help people know, A, like that is the truth, B, what to do about it, and C, how to make it easy so that you can keep doing it every day and it feels easy. Yeah.
And one of the things that I find that the feedback I get from my clients is like, I'm doing it because you're telling me to do it, right? You're holding my hand, you're supporting me on doing it. My clients work with me for a long time because yes, you've learned how to do this. Yes, you've learned the system, but implementing it over and over and over again, you need that accountability. You need somebody to be like, hey, can you look at this pitch? Hey, what do you think of this story? Hey, this is what's going on. How do I leverage that? How do I create this opportunity for myself? And that's one of my superpowers. That's one of the things that I'm a manifester, I'm a 4/6, I'm all those things. It's so true. But I think that people think it's a one and done. And this is just like your marketing. And that's why I want people to think about it as a business tool and not just something we're doing. Because if you continually do this, you continually get media, you continually leverage it, you continually promote it, that's the way that you get to whatever your goals are. And your goal could be to sell 3 one-on-one programs, or your goal is to be your own TV show and a book produced by Hay House. I don't care what it is, you're doing the exact same thing.
How can people get into your world so if they are like, I'm doing podcasts, but I'm not leveraging them, or even if you're like me and you're like, I just want to be known, or you're like Beth and you're like, I want to be famous. You serve all of those people. How can they get into your world?
100%. So if anyone is listening to this, just DM me on Instagram, Jen Liddy, and I will send you a Jen Liddy exclusive download with all the information, and we'll get into the conversation. I appreciate you so much, Jen. Thank you.
Oh, that's cool. I'm so excited to see what that is.
Yeah.
I'm going to have all of the ways you can get into Beth's world in the show notes of this podcast. But I wanted to say, Beth, thank you for coming on and talking about it. This is a journey that you've been on, and you've been so open. And I've loved being part of the journey just in our Voxer conversations and sitting on your couch too. And to you, listener, thank you for showing up. Thank you for listening all the way through. I know there's so many podcasts out there, and I appreciate that you come listen to this one. Remember, we are going on hiatus for a little while. I hope to be back soon. And if you do want to get into my world, just go to jenliddy.com/backstage. Grab that Backstage Brilliance Marketing Toolkit with the code CCME, or you can even email me directly at hello@jenliddy.com, and I will personally respond to you. I want to say, go get Beth's stuff because the world needs to see you, needs to hear your brilliance. Even if you think like what you do, there's a million people on the planet, Beth will help you differentiate yourself and set yourself apart so that you can be seen by the exact right people who need you. So thanks for showing up today. And Beth, thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Bye, everyone.